Hey, well, thank you for that lovely introduction. It's always a pleasure to do these online Zoom workshops for everyone. And I really hope everybody learned something from these little 1 hour sort of sessions that we do. Let me just, I want to show you because I know it's a little bit weird. This is the example that we're painting for, there we go, for the in-person painting workshop for at the Will Library, which will be next Saturday. And this is an acrylic, but we're going to do the same setup composition with oil pastel. And today, just to mix it up and make this a multimedia piece, we'll also be using watercolor. And as Valerie mentioned, there is a template for this for the candles, but candles with dripping wax, all candles are our cylinders. So I'd like everyone who is working along with me, or if you can watch the video afterwards, to just try drawing this first as 3 different height cylinders. And I should just also give a little history about why I always do this grouping. I love painting candles with dripping wax. I've been, ever since I started painting, I don't know, I love the way it looks. I love painting it from life, and I love painting it from my mind. They're just fun. And the reason why I chose candles and these colors, candles and lights in general, we're in the season of holidays that celebrate their holidays with light, whether it's Diwali in November, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Christmas with Advent, all the way into Lunar New Year and beyond. Light is an important part of the holidays. So without further ado, let's go on to how I created this painting. And I am using, when I use oil pastel, I don't draw any kind of, or sketch any kind of preliminary planning with pencil. I use oil pastel. And if anybody's done these workshops with me before, it's because oil pastel likes to cover itself, but it does not cover pencil. So let's start with, we have a 9x12 sheet of drawing paper. It's a little bit heavier than computer paper, has a little bit more of a texture. We call that tooth. And I like to just I always tend to favor the left side when I do these compositions. If you want to have your trio of candles in the middle, if you want to do more than 3 candles, if you want to do 2 candles, you first plan where you're going to put them. So really lightly, and I'm going to do this a little bit, and please let me know, someone just say it out loud. I can't see the chats. If you can't see, I mean, I'm only gauging on what I can see on my monitor, so I will try to adjust. Valerie, let me know if it's too glary. What I'm doing first is planning out my 3, where I'm putting my 3 candles, and I like to overlap. I like to have one on top of another, not side by side. And it's kind of like you want to have it like you would set it up in real life. So if I had 3 candles in front of me, I would, and I'll probably, oh good, I can see it. Hopefully everyone can see it on their monitors. You do want to make sure, unless you're tilted on your table, you want to make sure your lines are vertically straight, pretty much here horizontally straight. You can intersect it and go through if you don't want to, if you want to make sure you have 3 straight lines. There's lots of ways to skin an apple. I'll move my monitor closer so you can see it as well. And I'm using a darker blue to draw just so you guys can all see. If you're doing this yourself, use a light blue or a yellow or a gray. You'll be able to cover this if you use a darker color, but it's easier to cover light. So those are my 3 cylinders, and that's what candles are. There are some square candles and tall, what they call the gosh, it just escaped me what the tall thin candles are. If anybody knows what they are, shout out. It literally,
Tapers.
thank you, the taper candles. These are just the nice kind of fat votive type. No, the votive are smaller. There's a word for this, and forgive me, I've been teaching all day. I've been teaching teenagers. Today I have 4 freshman classes in my normal senior class, and it was just a hectic day. So that is basically my composition. Everything else comes after. If you like your composition, and leaving some room at the top, because we're going to do the candle glow. Then at this point, you can start coloring. Now the drips, all the drips are the wax melts and it goes over. And really, I'm just showing you this for the purposes of if you want to sketch it. But honestly, this stuff you would do after you start coloring, because it's oil pastel and oil pastel covers itself. But a lot of people like to do this pre-planning before they start coloring. The lip of the candle is going to be a little uneven because it's wax. So we want to have, I mean, think of it as kind of like paint cans if you want. Paint gathers at the top, but this is wax and it's even lumpier. Everything else can come after. So I like to start coloring from the background forward. There is no horizon line here. We can go ahead and add it. This is actually kind of abstract for me. I'm a super realistic painter. And my drawings are very figurative. If you want to give yourself a table edge, call it that. Again, you can draw all the way through. So you make sure you have a nice straight line. And then you can have two separate colors. The shadow line comes after as well. You can plan that. And what the shadow does is it grounds the candles. Otherwise, they look like they're floating. Also, there's chiaroscuro lighting is what I call it. It's not, it could be even more dramatic here, but chiaroscuro lighting, that's like painters like Caravaggio and Artemisia Gentileschi, all those artists from the kind of that Renaissance era use the dramatic lighting. Candles cast that kind of light where it's high contrast light. So the shadow is going to be strong and we'll see it in a nice strong way. So at this point, maybe I'll do a little, go to the traditional route. I won't do mine. I just like to mix it up and I'll do some red, green and maybe like a creamy white candle. And I'll just start locking in my color there. Before I do that though, I'm gonna, like I said, do the background first. And because I'm using red, green, and white, my lighting in the background might be different. I think I'll do like a yellowish green light. See, this is the fun part. Because I'm doing red, white, and green, I want to use colors that sort of work with red, white, and green, and the opposite of red is green, and vice versa. So, and because the light's going to be centered here where the wicks are, I'm going to start with my green, the darker on the edges. And what I'm doing, I'm sort of just adding color in a curved sort of way. If you have watercolor, you can leave this empty and put your watercolor in. I might do a combination. Again, I think I wrote that to you, Valerie. I say I might do a combination. There it goes. But I'm sort of just blocking in my color now. And what I always tell my students, whether it's paint, watercolor paint, even watercolor, oil pastel, even color pencil, right now I'm just adding the ingredients in. And then I use my light color, my white, to mix everything. So these are my ingredients, and I'm putting it in pretty roughly. And if we were to color with crayon, this would be okay, but we're not using crayon. We're using oil pastel. And another trick that I do, because I'm going to have a red candle, I put touches of red, sprinkles of red in the background. So I do all that before I mix it. And white, I have tons of white. Well, pastel. White helps you blend everything. And we can use this light green too, because I have that green in the background. You can use a combination. Of course, it's here. Okay. So the lighter color mixes your darker colors. And as I mix it, I'm being mindful that I'm trying to make this like radiate. So on my stroke radiates. It's not vertical or horizontal. It's the direction of the light that's cast. And that's all centering around the candles. And normally when I do oil pastel, I do it on a flat surface. So hopefully you will all be doing this on a flat surface. This is a great workout for my muscles here, my arm muscles. Sometimes I wish I try to use sometimes both my left and right arms when I do something like this, so I can become more ambidextrous, but I'm definitely a righty. And because I want to use some watercolor, I'm going to leave a lot of this just white. And so I don't know if you could see, hopefully, I'm kind of skipping here a little bit. Oil and water don't mix. So wherever I have oil pastel here, the water will not touch, and I have my white. And I can do a little more aggressively with the white here because white is blending. White's not adding any color. But I don't want to cover too much because I want to have a little bit of a surprise with my watercolor. All right, so now at this point too, go ahead and adjust your background. So what this does too, you cannot hear it as much as when I first started, because now there's a nice coating of oil pastel on here. So now whatever I do with a lighter touch, and I'm blending it. Oil pastel does take some practice. I won't lie. I've been using oil pastel for years, but the more you work with it, the more comfortable you can become with it. If you like oil pastel, some people prefer using watercolor paint or acrylic paint or color pencil. I just find oil pastels are inexpensive. And I'm gonna have to say the F word again, they're forgiving, because I say that a lot, but it's true. And they're fun. They're fun to work with. Kids like them, grown-ups like them. They're great preliminary. They're great to use as preliminary, to do preliminary sketches for larger works, for oil paint or oil on canvas. So there's nothing to not like about oil. If you want to also, because again, this is a glow, radiating around the candles, go ahead and put just the direction of your, in this case, white. Try not to overdo it again, because we're going to try to give ourselves a little bit of a surprise with the watercolor. Blend it out that way. Because again, they're glowing. The candles are glowing. There we go, some glow. And we can adjust that too after we put the watercolor, see if that gives us a desired effect. So now I'm going to start going ahead and painting, coloring in the candles. The candles are going to be darker in the where the wick is, and I haven't drawn in the wick. I'm going to add the wick. Same thing here. I'm just adding the ingredients because a lighter color is going to blend it all in. The shadow of the big globs of wax, I'm going to add in after with oil pastel. As with anything, we work light to dark, but right now I'm adding in my main color. And with everything, you follow the direction of the object you're drawing or coloring. So I had that nice light green. I'm going to pull up again. Here it is. And this is where you add a little more pressure and blend, because my main ingredient of the green is in, whisking this in with my lighter color. Same thing with the base, the body of the candle. It's always a process of layering. You go in stages. Layer, add another color, adjust, layer. We're literally coating the paper helping us to add another layer. Heal as you go. If you have fresh new oil pastels, you can take off all the paper if you want. It does, if you have warm hands and you peel off the whole label, it's gonna get on your fingers. If you have colder hands, then go for it. But I like to try to keep my fingers a little clean. And the edge is not going to be completely smooth because the candle wax is dripping. So keep that in mind. All right. Now I'm going to go back because hopefully you still see some of your lines and using a darker color. Another thing is don't use black if you can avoid it. There's very little black in nature. So when we do shadows, I tend to use, in this case, because it's a green candle, you can use brown. People think that's weird, or red. But when you mix brown with green, it gets darker without adding too much of a dead light to it. So wherever I have the shadows, this is my brown. It's a complement of the green. It's a complementary color. So on the shadow side, I'm giving it a little bit of a thicker brown line. On the lighter side, it's a thinner brown line. So choose your shot. So this is where the shadow is going to the right. So the right side of my candle drips are going to have thicker line. And the right side of my candle will have a thicker line. And I'm exaggerating everything here. This is realistic, but it's also kind of a little bit on the cartoon side because it's kind of exaggerated, but why not have a little fun with this? And then where the inside of the candle is, I'm just doing a little bit of a edge with this complementary brown. And then using the equalizer, which is green, that's what I started with. Now I can blend that in. And when you blend it, you kind of pull it into the shape you want it to be in. And that's what makes it look 3D and quite realistic. The lighting, the shading becomes realistic when you blend. Excuse me. Now that the darks are in, I can go back with my light. Light from here, I just and pressing pretty hard now because you're covering. It's kind of like painting with a stick, pushing in my white, my highlights. Wherever I want it to be shine, a highlight, I push in my white. Also helps blend because you don't want an outline. You just want it to be defined and have shadow and highlight. And that green candle is basically done. So I think next to the green candle, we'll put a creamy white candle. So I'm going to do the creamy part first. That's the mid-tone. Same way I did the green. So by the time you get to the third candle, doing the same method, you'll be an expert at candles. You're going to cover, again, my green candles in the middle. So go right over the lines that you used to draw. Anything here, I may make this strip a little thicker. And if you want to do the backmost candle here first before you do that one, you could do that too. But I like to, in this case, I'm going to clean up my edges by doing that back candle afterwards. All right, so now I'm going to go with my white. That's going to have some green on it, which you can leave on or clean and mix that a little bit because it's a creamy candle. hard to leave anything purely white. You can make a light blue one. I don't know what colors everybody's choosing, but usually if you're going to use, nothing is pure white when you are using paints. You have to always kind of mix it with some sort of color. And it often comes off looking white, even though you've used other colors. In this case, the blue is adding the shadow already. Another nice reason to use blue. It's kind of neutral. It helps you add some shading. All right. I'm going to use that blue, a lighter blue, to do my shadows, the shadow side and the light side. And the back is a little bumpy because the back also has dripping. Let's not forget. So you're going to do a slightly bumpy edge. You want to get the darker blue. Really make the dark side darker. And right here next to that green, I'm going to define that edge with a little bit of brown. Brown and green are opposite again, so you want a little contrast right there. It's a painterly thing to do, mixing colors like that. And I'm defining my dark edges too with this brown. Okay, now the white. I'm going to have this candle as green, as red. So over here, ideally, because the opposite of red is green, should put a little bit of green there. We won't see it as green, but when that red is there, it'll just contrast it. So before I mix my white in there, I put a little green. Okay, and I'm going to go back now and put my, pretty aggressively, you put your highlights on with the white. Or whatever light color, even if you're making a blue candle, you would still use white for your highlights. That's a sort of a standard thing. And then I like to get the whole thing colored in before I go in, and a lot of times I just, like for instance, here, you can clean this up. So before I do all that though, I'd like to get the all the main things filled in. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something, and then when you go back and add all details, it's easier. So that's my second candle. Now again, because this is green, I'm just going to just find that edge a little bit with the brown so it pops out, and then blend that in. And it's just at the very edge, not really outlining so much as it's defining it. And then red, my last color here. I'm actually thinking of doing a pink base and then using red as the shadow area. So now here I'm coloring in my negative space, the space around the positive space, as a way to help define my positive space, which is a nice technique a lot of artists use, especially when you're painting like trees in the forest or something. You paint in the initial background, add the trees and branches, and then go back and define trees and branches by painting the sky or whatever's behind it. And it's easier than trying to paint the trees and branches, which we'll just do a landscape soon. We haven't done a landscape in a while. And then I can show you of what I speak instead of talking about it. Because in this case, it's much easier to define here, this background. But in the case of the leaves and branches, it is as well. Clean up your background to help your positive shapes space pop out. It's almost like using it as an eraser. I'm gonna have this one drip lower than I did. Maybe have a double drip. Yeah, why not? Have a double drip there. It's more interesting. Looks like candy. Okay. I should make my pink candle now more red. And I'm gonna use an even darker red here for the shadows. Define this again. This is a negative space behind my creamy candle, so I'm defining that, and I'm adding detail to my pinkish red candle here. Okay, adding the red. It's much easier to put color on another color. Easier in terms of it's smoother, you can feel it smoother on your underneath your oil pastel, because there's a coating of the oil mixed with pigment already on the paper. So it glides on easier. The wax lip here. And the opposite of green, red is green, so we use a greener color to get my nice deep shadows. Both sides, thin line on the light side, thicker line on the darker side. I'm going to blend it with the pink. And I'm just almost like a brush, I'm just feathering that in. With a whisk, whisking it in. All right, I'm going to look back and evaluate. And I need to add more white to the shiny parts, to the balls of wax here that I've So for all of them, so I'm gonna do now. So you can, now that the 3 candles are done, this is where you do all these little adjustments. Clean up your edges. Increase the contrast. Contrast is the fun when you do this, any kind of artwork. You need to have contrast. It helps define the shapes. It makes it look 3D. Well, we're not doing 2D illustration here. This is 3D. It makes it look like they have weight and volume and mass and all that stuff. So that's this adding lights and darks is what really does that. It's actually, it looks waxy, as it should, because these candles are made out of wax. All right. All right, now we can work on table surface here. And I'm going to continue with, I'm going to use this background with a little bit darker here and then lighter. So right where, again, because we have a table surface here, I'm going to make sure I have my horizon line, draw that in. And we do want to have this lighter than where the shadows cast, so I'm just adding my ingredients. Green tablecloth, I guess, here. Using a horizontal stroke because it's a flat table. If you wanted to also, you can break your oil pastel. So you have about a half-inch piece or so. I mean, this is a smaller surface, but when you have really big surfaces, if you break it and you turn it to the side, there's a lot more coverage, more even. There's less. You don't have those strokes, and you cover more with less effort. Shadow line in. And again, even though it looks like it's black on the table, the shadow is just making the green surface here darker. So even if you did this and did a solid green here, that would read as a shadow. So avoid the urge, I tell my students this all the time, to use black. Because all the shadow's doing is darkening the surface of darkening the color of the surface to a different tone. Tone is when something's mixed with black. Shade is when something is mixed with white, and tint is when something is mixed. I'm sorry, shade is when something is mixed with gray, and tint is when something is mixed with white. Advanced color theory there. So then this is going to be dark, so the table surface is going to be light. So let's go back. I have started using some of that yellow. Let me go back to that. I'm going to break my yellow. And then use my white again to mix everything there on the light side. And then for the dark side, I'm gonna add a little brown. Again, brown is the opposite of the green. Red is. You can also use red, but brown tends to be a little less drastic. Inside to add that yellow. Sure, my battery doesn't. Okay, good, 50%. Good. I have actually this light green. And with a lighter color, you can press harder as you're blending it. Think of it again as that whisk. Here, put all of them. I'm using white just to get it really blended. But you can see that just what I've done there already looks like it's shadow. Get that back to that brown here. Have your green ready to blend it. This deep and thick green makes that define your little shadow edges here, because right next to your objects, the shadows are going to be darker. Objects in this case being candles. Because that's right where the shadow is. The darkest is right next to the object. And again, taking this blue and really pushing that brown in and making it darker. Lightly sprinkling this brown on top evenly before I go back to my green. Green. That's what I started with. So I'm ending with here. Mixing it all together, making that green even darker because I added that brown. And blending in. You don't want to have the white paper showing here. This is shadow. I mean, I don't have white paper really showing anywhere. Even if you have the glow, I'm going to put that little bit of watercolor and see what surprise I get. People think that oil pastels don't have points, but they actually do. Every time it's not like a pencil point, but there is a sharper edge, and that's you kind of angle your oil pastel stub. That's a lot of times you just end up with the stub exactly where that point is, and then you get a nice sharp line or edge. It's a nice dramatic shadow. which is what you have when you, which is what you get when you have candles. And that's the only light. In this case, the only light is candles. So we want a nice dramatic shadow. All right. So now the wick and the flame. That's all pretty easy. I'm going to use my brown and my blue to get a nice dark. You can use black in this case if you really want that dark line. But again, I'm a purist. I'm just going to, with a blue, from the center of the candle, pull a line up. And then putting a brown here, darkening that, and then for each of them. And then we're going to go with the traditional yellow for the flame. Kind of leaving a little bit of white because the flame has like a dark area. Sometimes you see blue. I don't know if that's just for like propane flames or like those little candle lighters. I like to put some orange in the center. Blending it in, moving it upwards because that's how flames are. They burn upward. And then the white in the center. For that nice bright glow of the flame. Pulling it up, pushing in, pulling it up. All right. So you can see. I'll move it a little closer to you. I mean, you can call it done now, but I want to see what happens if I'm going to add my watercolor. Hopefully that didn't become glary. So I'm just using my standard set of watercolor. I have water. I have a big brush, but I know most people don't. So let me get a smaller brush. So it'll be more similar to what you're all using. And making sure your brush is nice and wet. I'm going to use a very pale yellow because I don't want to make the white. I don't want to darken it because I do just want that nice glow, but I do want to also like the warmth of that yellow really wetting this cake of watercolor. But you don't want a lot of pigment in there. And I don't, yeah, so good, I got that. I didn't cover too much white. And because it's water on top of oil, I can go right on top of the oil pastel. Sorry. So you don't have to be neat. But your stroke should follow the way your glow is. So, in an arc. Each one can have a little kind of glow there. Little crumbs of oil pastel. So I like the surprise. And then I still want to now I have to go and put some more detail where I brushed it off. Go ahead and go all the way to the edge. When the watercolor sits on top of the oil, it beads, and that gives you a nice effect too. When it dries, it has a little bit of a texture. About staying warm, we're fortunate that we can stay warm during the holidays. All right, so that's my little tiny watercolor portion. And while that's drying, and I have 10 minutes, I'm going to go, and this is drying, so I can't go over that yet because you can push on top of watercolor and the oil pastel won't do anything. So I'm going to give it a minute to dry. And in the meantime, I'm seeing some areas that I need to go back and define because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. And then, so with the brown, I'm going to do that for the green and the white. So happy, you're always like kind of adjusting until you sign it. Until I sign it, I don't, although I have cheated a couple of times. So when I sign something, I tell myself I'm done. Before I do that with this, I'm going to make these adjustments. I don't know if you noticed, but you trying to use a little bit of each color in each candle because they're all sitting together. So they're bits of the colors and each of them are reflected, or, to use a pun here because it's, and they're all picking up a little bit of each other's characteristic, and it helps create unity in a piece. So I just put red in this green candle, but it's not looking like a red candle. It's just picking up some of the red that's in the candle next to it, and blue and the white candle, et cetera, et cetera. It's another little trick that artists use, and that just kind of creates a nice unity in your composition. A little green here in the shadow of the red, it just deepens it, and again creates that unity that we need. Right, and now my flame is dry enough for me to add a little bit of that edge I lost. And then this is going to be ready to sign. Okay. Does anybody have any questions as we are coming to an end? Did it all make sense? It makes sense to me because I do this all the time, but does it make sense to you? Okay. Sign this. And just because, well, let me sign it here, there's room. And you can sign with pencil if you don't want to use oil pastel, but I have a nice long brown. I'm going to use that. So it's 12. 23. I just do the month and the year. And that is my trio of holiday candles.
It really does glow. I have to
Yeah.
say that it's amazing to me how it does that.
It's all light, you know, how we portray, like this one glows more than this one does because this is more stylized, but you know, oil pastel, it's paper, you use a little bit of watercolor. So it's not too glary still, is it? I can't.
No, not at all, but you can see it glow, and that's amazing to me.
Yeah. And the way that the flame, we trick the eye to, because of the glow, you know, we trick the eye to thinking those look like real flames. And it's all just pigment on paper.
So beautiful. I am so grateful to you, Teresa. So grateful to the NORC for offering this opportunity. If anyone wants to unmute and or share their work, now's the time, right?
Yes, I always ask, but you know, if anybody wants to share. Or if anybody has any questions, this is a great time to ask questions.
Well,
one of these days we're going to have a collaborative kind of, I don't know, everybody sends a piece of what they did and I create a, you know, a mosaic mural with a little piece of something everybody did. And that's what we did at the Will Library this summer twice. And it was great. Everyone contributed something to the collaborative quilt, we called it. But
very nice.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you, Teresa. We'll see you again.
Yes.
In January?
I believe so. Yes, we're going to do January
30th. Yep.
I think we'll do a landscape. We haven't done that in a while.
Ooh, that might be pretty.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, Teresa, whatever you do, I know it's going to be great. And I know we're going to be inspired. And I know we're going to have a great time. So thank you all for coming, everybody. Thank you, NORC. Thank you, Teresa. And have a healthy and happy holiday season.
Yes, everybody have a great holiday. Stay safe and warm.
Take good care. Bye.
Bye-bye.